Last week, a boomer called Gen Z the laziest generation in history. A Gen Z person replied, "Okay, enjoy your 3 divorces and the planet you destroyed." And then I realized something that made my blood run cold. Neither of them is wrong, and neither of them is right, because there's something far darker happening here that nobody's talking about. Each generation was psychologically programmed by historical events, by economic systems, by technology to think completely differently. And once you see the pattern, you'll never look at generational fights the same way. But here's the disturbing part I discovered at minute 432. I'm sitting at a family dinner last month. My boomer dad says, "Your generation expects everything handed to them." My millennial sister fires back, "Your generation bought a house for $30,000 and ruined the economy." My Gen Z cousin doesn't even look up from his phone. Everyone's angry. Everyone's right. Everyone's wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. So I did what any rational person does at 2 a.m. I went down a research rabbit hole that changed everything I thought I knew about human psychology. What I found wasn't just about generations. It was about how human brains are literally shaped by the world around them during critical development years. And the implications are terrifying. But before I show you the psychological programming of each generation, you need to understand the one scientific principle that explains all of this. Neuroscientists discovered something called critical period plasticity. Between ages 8 and 18, your brain is like wet cement. Whatever historical events, economic conditions, and technology surrounds you during those years literally hardens into your worldview. You don't choose your values. Your formative years program them into you. This is why you can never convince a boomer that hard work doesn't guarantee success anymore. Their brain was formed in an era when it did. That's not an opinion, that's neurology. And here's where it gets dark. I analyzed 6 generations, and I found that each one was programmed by a totally different reality. Not slightly different, completely different psychological universes. Let me show you exactly how they programmed each generation. And warning, when you see your own generation, this is going to feel uncomfortable. The silent generation, 1928 to 1945. The programming event was, they grew up during the Great Depression and World War II. Imagine this. You're 10 years old. Your family is starving. There's no safety net, no government help. People are dying in the streets. Then, a world war breaks out. What gets programmed into your brain? Scarcity mindset, loyalty, authority, waste nothing, trust institutions, keep your head down, survive. That's not a choice. That's trauma-based programming. This is why your silent generation grandparents save every plastic bag and can't throw away leftovers. Their 10-year-old brain learned resources are scarce, waste equals death. You can't unprogram that with logic. Baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Now here's where it gets controversial. The programming event was post-war economic explosion, unprecedented prosperity, technology boom, civil rights movement. Picture this. You're 10 years old in 1956. Your dad worked at a factory, bought a house, supports a family of 5 on one income. College costs $400 a year. Houses cost $12,000. Jobs are everywhere. What gets programmed? Optimism, meritocracy belief. Work hard equals guaranteed success. Question authority. Change is possible. The world is abundant. That's why boomers say just work harder. In their formative years, that actually worked. Their brain was programmed in an economic cheat code era that will never exist again. But here's what they don't realize. Gen X, 1965 to 1980. The programming event was Latchkey kids, divorce epidemic, economic instability, Cold War anxiety, MTV. You're 10 years old in 1975. Both your parents work or divorced. You come home to an empty house, keys around your neck. You raise yourself. TV and MTV are your babysitters. You watch Watergate. Authority figures lie. What gets programmed? Independence, skepticism, self-reliance. Trust no one. Institutions will fail you. Figure it out yourself. Irony is armor. This is why Gen X seems cynical. They were programmed by abandonment and institutional betrayal during brain formation years. They're not negative, they're realistic based on their programming. Millennials, 1981 to 1996. And now we get to the generation that confuses everyone. The programming event was told they were special, promised prosperity. Internet arrives, then 9/11. Wars, 2008 financial collapse, crippling student debt. You're 10 years old in 1991. Your parents say go to college, you'll get a good job. Teachers say you can be anything. Technology is magical and new. The future is bright. Then you're 20. Two wars start. Economy collapses. Your degree costs $100,000. Entry-level jobs require 5 years experience. Houses cost 10 times what your parents paid. What gets programmed? Betrayal, optimism mixed with cynicism. We were lied to. Work smarter, not harder. Experiences over things. The system is broken. This is why millennials seem entitled to boomers, but anxious to themselves. They were promised one reality and delivered the opposite during the exact years their brain was hardening. Gen Z, 1997 to 2012. But nothing prepared me for what I discovered about Gen Z's programming. The programming event was smartphones from birth, social media, school shootings, climate crisis, pandemic during teen years, economic hopelessness, mental health crisis. You're 10 years old in 2007. You have an iPhone. You see everything, everywhere, all at once. School shootings are normal. Adults say the planet is dying and it's too late. You watch the economy crash. Then, during your critical teen years, global pandemic, isolation, Zoom school, social media comparison 24/7. What gets programmed? Anxiety, realism to the point of nihilism. Why try? The system is broken. We're all going to die anyway. At least we're honest about it. Community matters. Mental health matters. Authenticity matters. This is why Gen Z seems lazy to boomers. They're not lazy. They're logically responding to a reality where hard work doesn't guarantee survival. The planet might be uninhabitable in 40 years, and the social contract is dead. Their brain was programmed by existential threats during formation years. Gen Alpha, 2013 to present. The programming event is AI iPad from age 2. Algorithm curated everything. Post-pandemic world. They're being programmed right now by AI, doing their homework. iPad as pacifier, algorithm as parent, reality and digital blurred. No before internet world to remember. We don't know what they'll become yet. But their programming is already radically different from even Gen Z. Remember at the beginning when I said there's something disturbing at 432? Here it is. None of us chose our worldview. We were programmed by circumstances completely outside our control during the exact years our brain was forming. You think you have opinions, but you have programming. The boomer saying just work hard isn't being difficult. They're running on programming from a different operating system. The Gen Z person saying what's the point isn't being lazy. They're running on programming from a reality where effort and outcome disconnected. And here's the terrifying part. You can't just update this programming. It's hardwired. This is why generational fights are so vicious and so pointless. Imagine someone programmed in Java trying to convince someone programmed in Python that their code is wrong. They're literally speaking different languages built on different logical foundations. A boomer's brain says, I suffered, worked hard, succeeded. You should too. A millennial's brain says, I did everything right and still failed. The system is broken. A Gen Z brain says, the system was always broken. Why are we pretending? All three are correct based on their programming. All three are talking past each other. So what do we do? Is there any hope? Actually, yes. But it requires something most people won't do. Step 1. Recognize your programming. Ask yourself, what was happening in the world when I was 8 to 18? Those events programmed your worldview whether you realize it or not. Step 2. Recognize others' programming. When a different generation says something that makes you angry, ask, what reality were they living in during their formative years? Not to agree with them, but to understand why their brain produced that output. Step 3. Communicate across programming. Instead of, you're wrong, try, in your formative years, X was true. In mine, Y was true. We're both responding logically to different data sets. This doesn't fix the generational divide, but it stops the pointless fights. Here's what I realized after all this research. Every generation thinks the next one is lazy. Every generation thinks the previous one is out of touch. But it's not about lazy or out of touch. It's about different psychological programming responding to different realities. The silent generation survived the depression. Of course they're frugal. Boomers grew up in abundance. Of course they're optimistic. Gen X was abandoned. Of course they're independent. Millennials were betrayed. Of course they're anxious. Gen Z faces existential threats. Of course they're nihilistic. None of them are wrong. They're all products of their programming. Now I want you to do something. Comment your generation and one belief you hold that you now realize came from your formative years programming. For me, I'm a millennial, and I realized my belief that I have to optimize everything came from being programmed during an era where we were told we had to be perfect to succeed. What's yours? And here here's the real question. If you could reprogram yourself with one belief from a different generation, what would it be? Gen Z, would you want boomer optimism? Boomers, would you want Gen Z's authenticity? Drop it in the comments. Let's see if understanding our programming helps us actually learn from each other instead of just fighting. And if you want more content that explains the psychology behind why we think the way we do, subscribe. Because next week, I'm breaking down why social media has reprogrammed all generations and why nobody over 30 can keep up. Remember, you're not broken, you're not wrong, you're just running on software installed during your formative years. The question is, can you update it?